Today, I'm looking at the individual features of both the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally, and I'm going to put those features on a tier list. Now, this is not to say that one device is better than the other, because I think both devices are awesome. But if I do this right, let's be honest, there's going to be people who love both devices who are going to be mad at me, and feel free to tell me how I'm wrong in the comments. That's what makes this fun. But this is just my opinion. It is subjective, and you know, your tier list might be very, very different than mine. So stick around until the end, and I'll let you know how you can make your own version of this tier list, and then you can tell me all of the ways that your tier list is better than my tier list. Let's get started. Before I actually start ranking stuff, let's take a look at how I've got things set up here. And I just want to say first off that I've never made a tier list before. So if there's something that I'm doing that's weird, that other people don't do tier lists this way, or if I'm breaking the norms, let me know in the comment section down below. And if, you know, we enjoy making a video like this, then maybe I will do it again in the future and I'll get better at it. But you'll notice that I've kind of color-coded stuff. So we've got the Ally is all yellow stuff and the Steam Deck is all blue stuff. And I'm not going to go in order. I'm just going to kind of pick around and find stuff. So let's start off with the Ally. And we're going to start with the face buttons. I have to say the face buttons of the ROG Ally are the kind of face buttons that I really like. I prefer big, wide, flat buttons. My favorite face buttons on any controller are the face buttons on the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. I think that those buttons are absolutely fantastic. And these feel really, really close to those. They're a little rounded on top. I would prefer that they be a little less rounded. So I don't think I can put them at S tier, but they're absolutely A tier. I think that they are really good and they feel great when you're clicking them. I think that they're fantastic face buttons. All right, let's move on to the face buttons on the Steam Deck. I have to admit, when Valve first showed off the Steam Deck and everybody looked at that B button kind of hanging off the side, a lot of people, myself were included, were very concerned about what these face buttons would feel like. And overall, I feel like they're pretty good. When I'm comparing them to the ROG Ally, they're much smaller, which is not something that I like, and they're more rounded. That being said, I think that they feel pretty good, but they definitely are a step down in, I don't want to say quality, but they're a step down just from my personal preferences. So I'm going to take the face buttons of the Steam Deck and I'm going to put that at a B tier. I still think that they're fine, but they're definitely not as good as the face buttons for the ROG Ally. All right, next up, we're going to look at sound. The sound for the ROG Ally, I think, you know what, I got to be honest, I think that it's really good, but I also have some pretty terrible hearing, and so I don't know if I really feel qualified to talk about this. I would love to hear what you guys think of it, because I have no problem with the sound of either the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally. In fact, I'm going to say that's a wash for both of them, and I'm going to say they're both a good bit louder than something like the Nintendo Switch. So I think I'm just going to grab the audio for both of them and call it a tie. Let's move on to the L1 and R1 buttons. These are, you know, the bumpers. And I said L1, R1 because I couldn't fit bumpers in that little thing down there. When you're holding the ROG Ally, I feel like I have to reach just a little bit further than I would like to in order to hit those buttons. And it's really because they cut off right here and they don't extend just a little bit further. I wish that this black part of this button extended out just a little bit further and would make those buttons easier to reach. It's not a big deal, but it's definitely something that I don't like, especially when I compare it to the Steam Deck. I feel like those buttons, especially when I've got my hands wrapped around it, oh boy, you know what? I think I've just changed my mind. You know, when I have the Steam Deck in my hand, I think that the shoulder buttons on both the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally are just not generally great. Like, they're just a little bit too far of a reach, at least for me. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the L1 and R1 of ABXY and I'm going to put that at a C tier, and the L1 and R1 of the Steam Deck, I think I'm going to put that at D tier. I don't really like it. They feel fine, like they click well, but I don't like how far I have to reach, or it's just not the right placement for me. The screen for the Steam Deck, probably one of the worst features of the Steam Deck. If I could change one thing about the Steam Deck, it would be to replace that screen with something a little more vibrant. Now, if you have missed my recent video about SteamOS 3.5, then you probably are unaware that you now can upgrade the saturation of your Steam Deck without having to have any plugins. That's still in preview. It's not on the stable channel yet, but when that comes to the stable channel, it really does improve how the screen of the Steam Deck looks. But I gotta be honest, when comparing that to the ROG Ally, it is absolutely no contest. The screen of the Steam Deck, I'm gonna say, is B tier, and that, you know what? I think I might want to say C tier for that. I'm not going to say D tier because it still looks pretty decent, especially if you're not comparing it to something else. But it's nowhere near the Ally. And the Ally, the screen of the Ally is gorgeous. It is absolutely an S tier screen. The colors just pop right off. It's 120 frames per second, although I don't really utilize that much unless I'm doing some kind of game streaming. But when I talk about the screen of the Ally and the screen of the Steam Deck, the deck is definitely at a lower tier, and the screen of the ROG Ally is absolutely 100%, without a doubt in my mind, S tier. And you know what else is S tier? Our sponsor, UGREEN.
Whoa!
What is this?
I'm RG, the UGREEN Nexode RG 65-watt charger.
How'd you get in my bag?
I don't know. Magic?
Okay.
Hey, you got anything you need charged?
Always.
Well, good news. I can get an iPhone to 60% in just 30 minutes, or I can fully charge a MacBook Air in just 2 hours. A fast, robo-friendly charge.
Okay, well, I've got to charge my phone, my iPad, and my Retroid Pocket Flip. Let's do this.
I can also show you the charge status in real time of whatever you're charging, so you know if you're still charging or if you're fully charged. Here, let me hide my face. Plus, my thermal guard protects your devices in the event of unusually high internal temperatures or output by automatically adjusting your power levels and better protecting your connected devices. Hey Bill, your stuff's all done charging. By the way, tell your audience that they can pick up their own RG charger simply by checking out the link in the description.
And if you don't want to pick up the 65-watt version, you can always pick up the 30-watt version of me, although it's pretty cramped in here.
All right, let's move on and talk about operating system. The ROG Ally comes with Windows 11 pre-installed, and the Steam Deck comes with SteamOS. I'm currently running SteamOS 3.5, but if you're on the stable channel, you're running SteamOS 3.4.10. I gotta say, this is like the screen conversation, just in complete reverse. The SteamOS 3.5, well, just even SteamOS in general, ever since it came out, has been S tier, and the Steam Deck has continually just gotten better and better with every single update, so much so that even after years and years of running Windows as my gaming operating system of choice, I cannot wait for Valve to officially release SteamOS so that I can install it on my main PC. Windows has that familiarity, but it doesn't have that gamepad first design. And when you're dealing with a device where the main way of doing input is the gamepads, I feel like you gotta have a gamepad first design. I gotta put the ROG Ally, boy, I'm gonna say at C tier as far as the operating system. I just think it's so much worse of an experience than the operating system for the Steam Deck. You know what? Maybe not that bad. I'm going to say that it's probably a B tier. B tier is probably fine. I'm okay with it, and I can get by with it. I just don't like it very much. If you guys don't know, YouTubers can see like this research channel, and we can see what you're searching for. Not like you, but like what our audience is searching for. And one of the biggest things that people are constantly searching for is ROG Ally and emulation, and Steam Deck and emulation. And when I talk about these two things, it all comes down to EmuDeck. EmuDeck is fantastic software. Well, a fantastic script. If you don't know what EmuDeck is, it essentially takes all of your emulation stuff and configures it for you. And then all you have to do is drop your ROMs in the right folders, and then you're off to the races and ready to go. It's super, super easy. Now, it's called EmuDeck because it started on the Steam Deck, and that's right now where it runs the best. And honestly, at this point right now, if you were to ask me what is the emulation device that you would pick up before you pick up anything else, I would say pick up the Steam Deck. It is S tier for emulation. I absolutely love this thing. And the ROG Ally right now, I'm going to say is A tier. And the only reason that it is lower, because EmuDeck is also available for Windows, the only reason that it's lower is, as far as I am aware, EmuDeck is still, for Windows, is still behind a paywall while it's in beta. And then once they finish the beta testing of that software, it'll go free to everybody, just like it is on the Steam Deck, in which case, at that point, it would be moved up and it would be an absolute tie in S tier with the Steam Deck, because they're both fantastic devices for emulation if you have EmuDeck. Let's move on and talk about power. Steam Deck, when it came out, a lot of people were really surprised at the games that it could run. Of course, we were running games at lower frame rates and, lower resolution, but it was able to play games like Elden Ring with a little help from Valve, which is fantastic. I think that the Steam Deck, as far as a handheld goes, its power, and I just lost where that was, its power, absolutely, it's got to be A tier, in my opinion. Right now, having only used these two handheld PCs. Now, later on, when more stuff comes out, like the Legion Go or the Aya Neo Kun or the other stuff that I can't buy everything. Once those things come out, maybe this will change for me. But right now, I would say that as far as handhelds go, the Steam Deck is A tier. But the Ally is absolutely S tier. It has to be S tier because it is more powerful than the Steam Deck. It runs games a lot. Well, it runs some games a lot better, especially at higher TDPs. But since we're talking about higher TDPs, let's talk about lower TDPs, because that's where everything flips the other direction, where the Steam Deck does much better than the ROG Ally. The Steam Deck can run all the way down to, I think, 3 TDP. I'm not sure if it's the number 3 watts. It's a really, really low number. The lowest I believe that the ROG Ally can get down to is 7, and that's customized, but I believe most of the time it runs at 10 or 9 at its lowest, which means when you're at lower TDP, you tend to get better performance out of the Steam Deck, worse performance out of the ROG Ally. You tend to get better battery life out of the Steam Deck and worse battery life out of the ROG Ally. So when you're playing games that are lower TDP, the Steam Deck wins. The ROG Ally, doesn't win. Loses? I don't want to say loses, but anyway, at a low TDP, I'm going to put the Ally probably at about B tier, and I'm going to put the Steam Deck at a low TDP, probably around A tier, if I can find low TDP. There we go. Probably at about around B tier. The sticks of the ROG Ally are fine. One thing I really like about the sticks of the ROG Ally is they've got this little concave, almost like a bowl that your thumb sits in, and I feel like that's really, really comfortable. They also feel really good as you're going around. I'm not somebody who's like a connoisseur of sticks, so when I'm using this, I'm like, oh, it feels fine. There's no problems on this. It feels great. On top of that, they also have these LEDs around them, so if that's important to you, you can turn them on. I usually ignore them, but they're there if you want. So I think that these are fine. Nothing special to write home about there. And so because there's nothing special about those sticks, I'm going to take the sticks of the ROG Ally and I'm going to put those at B tier, which is, right in the middle. So that goes right there. Now, the sticks of the Steam Deck, first off, They don't have that bowl shape to them, which I think is unfortunate because I do like that better, but that might be because they are capacitive, which is absolutely huge and allows you to enable the gyro just by resting your thumb on the stick. When you pick your thumb up off the stick, the gyro shuts off and you get to control how that happens or not. I think that that is an absolute game changer. We'll talk about gyro probably next after this. But because of that capacitive stick, that puts it leagues ahead of everything else out there, in my opinion. The Steam Deck's sticks, I'm going to say, are S tier. And the only reason I'm going to go with S instead of A tier is because, you know, they just don't have that domed curve to them on the bottom. So we're going to grab those sticks and put them at A tier. But I think that they're fantastic, and I wish every single controller manufacturer would implement gyro as well as capacitive sticks. And since we're talking about gyro, we may as well dump gyro in there now. The Steam Deck's gyro is awesome, but I can't put it at S tier. And the reason, this is the Alpaca 3D printed controller. It has 2 gyros in it, and until you've actually felt what 2 gyros feels like when you're playing like a first-person shooter or something, you probably can't understand what I'm about to say. This is the only S-tier gyro that there is, in my opinion, which puts the Steam Deck's gyro, which is right about here. I'm going to say that that's an A tier right there. It's just so good, but it doesn't have 2 gyros. And if you want to know more about 2 gyros in this controller, I've got a video that I'll link at the end of this video down in the description. All right, the Ally gyro. You might be thinking, hold on a sec, Bill. The Ally doesn't have gyro. But yes, it does. And I don't understand why it's not activated by default. In fact, you have to do like a mod that somebody else made in order to utilize the gyro with your ROG Ally. And for that, I've got to put them down at C. If they didn't have a gyro at all, I'd put them all the way down at D, but they got to be at a, they have gyro and it's just not turned on, which means it's going to be C tier. And we might as well move on to mapping. Now, when we're talking about mapping, I'm talking about remapping your controllers in order to allow you to do what you want. I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised by the ROG Ally's mapping in Armory Crate. I think it's actually pretty good. It's nowhere anywhere near Steam Deck, and we'll talk about Steam Deck and Steam Input in just a second. But I have to say, I'm going to put this at B tier for remapping your controls in the ROG Ally. It's pretty powerful, but it's nowhere near the S tier, S rank of Steam Input. Steam Input is absolutely crazy. It's so friggin' good, and you can do whatever you want. So if I could just find remapping, that's got to be an S tier feature. The S tier feature of the Steam Deck is Steam Input, and it's the reason why I was so excited about the Steam Deck when it first got announced, was because I loved Steam Input on the Steam controller. It allowed me to do a billion things that the devs of the games never even thought of. So that's got to be an S tier, right? Let's move on to something that I never really considered before, and that is the repairability of your handheld. And the reason I'd never considered it before is because I would have never opened up one of these devices before I got my hands on these devices. Like, I would have opened up, well, that's not true. I opened up my Nintendo Switch, one of the Joy-Cons, because it broke, and I made it worse. And after that mistake, I said to myself, you know what, self, you probably shouldn't do that kind of thing. Well, after having the Steam Deck for long enough and, you know, seeing this awesome transparent backplate, I said, you know what, I think I can probably do this. I think I can probably figure it out. And I ended up doing this like long 7-hour stream where I put that transparent case on the Steam Deck. It was a nightmare. I don't know if I would ever do it again because it was it took me so long to do. And that was, you know, that was my choice. I chose to do it all at once as a live stream. But if I could do that, then this is one of the most repairable devices ever. And it seems like Valve built it with repairability and modification in mind, which is awesome. They were super transparent about it, and they even showed us, hey, here's what it's like on the inside of the Steam Deck before the Steam Deck came out, which was really cool. So I got to put the repairability of the Steam Deck all the way up at S tier. Now, when we've looked inside the ROG Ally, we found that there's a couple of things that they actually did better than the Steam Deck. The battery, for instance, is not glued down, it's screwed down, and that's huge for repairability and replacing your battery. And I would say that this is equally as modular and repairable, with one exception. You cannot get parts for the ROG Ally, at least not from an official source. And so that has to knock it down one notch. And you know what? Now that I think about it, I don't think you are able to get all of the different daughter boards for the Steam Deck either. Like, you can get some of them, but not all of them. So I'm going to move the repairability of the Steam Deck down to A tier, because it really is. And if it had every single part available for you to buy, then it would be moved up to S tier. And the repairability of the ROG Ally has to be a little bit lower than the Steam Deck here, because I do think that it's just as modular, but until you can get parts from, you know, the source or officially, I don't think you can really count that as repairable. All right, let's move on and talk about the special buttons. So on the Steam Deck, we have the Steam button. Where's my light? We have the Steam button right here, and we have the quick access menu over here. And on the ROG Ally, we have, our button for the command center, and then our button that launches Armory Crate over there. And I have to say, one of my biggest gripes about the Steam Deck is how mushy the Steam button and the quick access menu buttons feel. Now, some of you may have a Steam Deck that is very different than mine. Mine is it's a pre-launch prototype version that was sent to me by Valve, and so maybe they feel better now, like the newer ones, but they just feel kind of spongy and not great. And so I'm going to take those and I'm going to put those at C tier, because honestly, they feel pretty terrible. So we'll move those up to C tier. Now, for the ROG Ally, those buttons feel fantastic. They are raised up above the chassis. Is that the right word? They're raised up above the chassis of the ROG Ally, and they click really well when you push them in. So I think that those are fantastic. As far as their functions that go along with that, I think that all would fall under UX, which is what we're going to do next. As soon as I find the special buttons of the Ally, we'll move that up to B tier. Actually, I think maybe A tier. Those buttons feel really, really good. All right, let's talk about the UX. I think that anybody who's watched my content for any length of time, they're going to know that I'm going to take SteamOS's layout, not desktop mode, because I don't really use desktop mode for almost anything. But I'm going to take the UI or UX of Steam and on the Steam Deck, and that's got to be at least A tier. I think there's definitely some things that they could do a little bit better, but overall, I think it's pretty damn good. So let's find that right there, UX. I'm going to put that at A tier. The UI for the ROG Ally, it's just Windows 11, and they tried as hard as they could to fix that with Armory Crate. And there's a couple of things about Armory Crate that I really like. The ability for you to customize the menu that pops up when you push the command center button. I think that's great that you can customize that. Can't really customize that on the Steam Deck. But overall, I just find it kind of blah, and 9 times out of 10 when I'm launching something out of Armory Crate, I end up having to go into Windows anyway in order to get something to start, because Windows is just kind of being goofy. So I'm going to say that, I gave the Steam Deck's UI an A. I think I got to give the ROG Ally's UI, which is right about where? I cannot find it. Right there. I got to give that a C. Like, it's definitely a couple of steps down from the Steam Deck, but most of the time what I end up doing is I jump right into Steam as soon as I start my ROG Ally, and I try and avoid Armory Crate at all costs because it's just not anywhere near as good of an experience. Okay, triggers. Got to talk about the triggers on the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally. I'm trying to decide which ones I like better. I feel like there's more resistance for me on my ROG Ally's triggers than on the Steam Deck's triggers. Yeah, the Steam Deck trigger definitely gives you a lot less resistance when you're pulling that trigger. And I think that that could either be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what kind of game you're playing. So if you're playing a game like a racing game or something where you want to have that super fine control, I feel like you want to have a little bit more resistance. Of course, it is important that I say that I completely took my Steam Deck apart, and so maybe the springs lost a little bit of their springiness in the trigger when I did that. But for me, it definitely doesn't feel as resistive. Now, if you're playing a first-person shooter, you want that trigger to go off as fast as possible. And you can, using Armory Crate and using, Steam input, you can customize that so you really don't have to worry about hitting the bottom really fast. So I got to give the edge out to the ROG Ally. I think that those triggers are better. So let's grab those triggers, and we're going to move them up, which if I could just find them. There we go. I'm going to say that they're probably B tier, and I'm going to move the Steam Deck's triggers, which are right here. They're C tier. They're okay. They're not bad. Between the two of these two, and I know this one looks way cooler, at least in my opinion, because of the transparent shell. I'm not counting the transparent shell. We're going to imagine that I still have my black shell Steam Deck, right? I think the Steam Deck looks cooler than the ROG Ally. The Ally has that weird hologram thing on the back, and I don't like that. I don't like that it's white. Like, it's going to get dirty over time. I try as hard as I always wash my hands before I'm playing games on this thing. I don't like white electronics, especially things that are going to be in your hands a lot. And this is also, like, it's kind of textured, and so I feel like it's just going to get dirty. But let's pretend that it would never, ever get dirty. I still don't like the way it looks nearly as much as the Steam Deck. I think the Steam Deck looks way, way cooler. So when it comes to looks, I'm going to put the ROG Ally at a B tier. It's fine, I guess. And I'm going to put the Steam Deck all the way up at S tier. It's the coolest. I think this thing looks fantastic. It's great. All right. Actually, no, I lied. I'm going to move that down to A tier. And here's the reason. My Steam Deck with the transparent shell, or, other people with the purple shells on them, those are S tier. The black one, that one's A tier. Okay. Let's talk about the back of this thing. We were just talking about that weird hologram thing on the back, but back here we also have these M1 and M2 buttons on the back. These are the little extra buttons that you can hit with your middle finger, and the Steam Deck has 4 of them on the back. So, the Steam Deck has 4, ROG Ally has 2, which you might think that I'm automatically going to give that to the Steam Deck because the Steam Deck has twice as many options, right? I gotta be honest, for me, I only ever use 2 of them. And for the Steam Deck, I always use the 2 that are on the right-hand side. I almost never use the 2 that are on the left-hand side. I'm not sure why. I just find it more comfortable to do it with my right hand than with my left hand. So, having 2 more that I never use, for me, doesn't really matter. So, which buttons are better? Well, when I first got the Steam Deck, I probably would have said that, this one, not great because I was pushing the buttons wrong. And I know people are going to say, hold on, Bill, pushing the buttons wrong? What are you talking about? That sounds like a stupid thing. Listen, if you have a Steam Deck, trust me, if you're squeezing them by pressing on the buttons on this side right here, you're making a mistake. You got to push on the back of the button right here, like you're pushing towards the front of the system. It feels much better that way. So I'm going to say, when I first got the Steam Deck, before I tried using them different, I would have put them at a B tier. Actually, I would have put them at a C tier, but I'm going to move the back paddles of the Steam Deck up to, boy, I would have put them at a D tier. I'm going to move them up to a C tier. I think that the back paddles of the Steam Deck are a C tier. And I think the back paddles of the ROG Ally, they are easier to hit, and they also have like a little bit of, like, your finger can find a little bit of grip on them, which I really, really like. So for that, I'm going to say that the back paddles of the ROG Ally, they're going to, I'm torn between B tier and A tier. I think I'm going to say B tier. I think that, I think that B tier is where those things belong. The Steam Deck costs $400 at its cheapest, although it's on sale all the time, and you can get refurbished units for all the way down to $320. And the ROG Ally, its cheapest version, I believe, is $600, and its most expensive version is $700. Am I remembering that right? I think that I am. First off, I would say for the Steam Deck, the cheapest version is definitely something you should consider if you're going to pick up an extra an extra SSD to replace, which is a super easy thing to do. I will leave a link down below of some SSDs that you can pick up that would be compatible with both of these devices. But as far as price goes, you cannot beat the Steam Deck for a price to performance ratio. It's just crazy how good that is. So I think the Steam Deck has to be S tier in this case. It's so cheap to get into handheld PC gaming with the Steam Deck. But you got that ROG Ally, and a lot of people might say, okay, well, you got the $600 version and the $700 version, the Z1 versus the Z1 Extreme. Nobody, in my opinion, having never used it, which I know I'm coming from a place of ignorance, nobody should get the Z1 version. For an extra $100, you are going to have a whole, if you save $100 on getting the Z1, you will be saddled with more than $100 worth of regret and wonder, should I have gotten the Z1 Extreme, than if you just spend the extra $100 and get the Z1 Extreme. And while I would say the Steam Deck was given to me by Valve, I paid my own money for the ROG Ally. Asus did not send that to me. So I would definitely recommend, if you're going to get this one, get the Z1 Extreme. But when it came out, we were expecting it to be a lot more expensive than it is. I'm not going to say it's A tier, but it's definitely B tier, because it's not that crazy cost of, some of these $1,200 systems that are out there. So I think that it's a pretty compelling price for $700. I would still, again, just want to repeat, never get the $600 version. Well, let's say you buy it and you decide that you don't want it anymore. You're like, this was a mistake. Risk. I think I have to give the Ally, as far as risk, saying it's risky buy, I'm going to say S tier. Not saying that that's risky, but saying that it's not risky. There's a low risk to buying the ROG Ally, and which is why I'm putting it at S tier. And the reason why is because you could just return it to Best Buy. You could just walk into a store and say, hi, I'd like to return this. Give me my money back. That is awesome. There is an RMA process that you have to jump through hoops with the Steam Deck. And I'm not saying that Valve is doing anything nefarious or anything, but the ROG Ally, nothing's easier than just walking into a store and saying, can I have my money back? And here's my receipt. So I think that it's a very, very low risk for the ROG Ally. And as far as risk when it comes to the Steam Deck, I guess I'm going to say that's probably at a B tier. All right. Having not had to avail myself of the RMA process. Let's take a look at the layout. When I first looked at the Steam Deck, when it first got announced, the Steam Deck has the two sticks up top. And one thing that I have always said is that is a winning move. The Nintendo Switch, when it came out, had one stick up on top and the right stick down on the bottom. And it felt awful and uncomfortable. And I always hated that as a move, especially after Nintendo had gotten it right with the Wii U, because they had both sticks up at the top. Having both sticks at the top is incredibly smart and it feels really good. So I'm a huge fan of that. Now, when the ROG Ally was announced and they had the sticks offset, which I know a lot of people prefer, I was really, really worried about that. But I gotta say, it's pretty good layout. I don't feel like there's anything that's really out of reach outside of the, you know, the points that I already took away from both the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally on those bumpers. I think that everything's pretty reachable. So I think that that's a wash. They're going to be a tie. And I'm going to say that they're both A tier when it comes to their layout. And where's the layout for the ROG Ally? Right there. All right. Let's talk about the D-pad. The D-pad of the Steam Deck is fine. There's nothing fancy or special about it. I just think it's fine. It does its job. I'm not a fighting game guy, so take what I'm saying about that with a grain of salt. I don't play super precise platformers all that often either. So the D-pad for me is usually just like a weapon selector, and I'm fine with it. No problems at all. It's a B tier D-pad. No big deal. The ROG Ally, when I first saw it, I was like, boy, that D-pad looks like hot garbage. But honestly, it's also fine. Like, I don't really see many problems with it. And honestly, I feel like it feels a little clickier than the Steam Deck. So I'm going to move that up higher than the Steam Deck. And I'm going to take the D-pad for the ROG Ally. That's got to be an A tier. It's definitely, you know, not like the best D-pad that I've ever had, but it's better than the Steam Deck. And actually, you know, now that I'm looking at my tier list here, I feel like I'm going to move them both down one. Okay, so I'm going to put the D-pad of the deck down at C and the D-pad of the Ally at B. We're running out of stuff. Let's talk about the docked experience. The docked experience for the Steam Deck is pretty good, but when the deck first came out, it was really bad. Everything was really slow. It couldn't really change the size of everything. Things were either way too big or way too small, and it had trouble just rendering the UI of the, you know, the gamepad centric launcher without stuttering on my TV over there. But since then, Valve has really improved what the docked experience is like, which is the reason why I think that they delayed the dock, was because they wanted to nail that first. So I do think that they did a great job with that. And I'm going to put the docked experience probably, well, I'm struggling between, you know, I'm going to put it at a C tier. It's not great. It's not bad. But it could improve. I think it actually, I'm going to put it in the middle. I think it's okay. I think it's pretty good. Now, conversely, the docked experience of the ROG Ally, if you all don't know, I've got an arcade system, an arcade cabinet over there. And that arcade cabinet is often powered by my ROG Ally. The reason I do that is because the ROG Ally is better at running Street Fighter 6, and I like to be able to play Street Fighter 6 on my arcade cabinet with my arcade sticks. It's really fun to play that way. And so I have a dock in my arcade cabinet so that I can play the ROG Ally that way. But I cannot tell you how many times that I go to log in to my system and I got to put my finger on the fingerprint reader and it won't read the fingerprint reader. So then I have to go up, undock, swipe up from the bottom so that it brings up the screen, type in my little passcode, and then redock. And that happens every single time that I want to use the ROG Ally docked, because the fingerprint reader just will not work for me. I've tried adding in my finger multiple times. It's a bad experience. And so because of that, I'm going to take that and I'm going to put the Ally, the docked experience, down at the D tier, because you should not have to do that. It should just log in for you easily every single time. Is that ASUS's fault or is that Microsoft's fault? I have no idea. For the Steam Deck, Sleep and Resume works so well, I don't even think about it. Like, I forget that I'm playing on a PC and I just sleep my games when I'm done with them, and then I wake it back up and it works every single time. I think I'm going to put that at A tier. It's a really, really great feature, and boy, it's an absolute game changer. Now, for the Ally, it does not always work as well as the Steam Deck does, so I'm going to put it down at B tier. Actually, I'm maybe C, but I feel like I can't really. It's somewhere between B or C, and it won't let me put it between those two things, so I'm not sure where I want to put that, but I'm going to leave it right there. And here's the reason. I got to be honest. When I'm playing a game on my ROG Ally, I just never seem to use the sleep or wake feature. I usually finish a game and I shut it down. And I don't know if that's the wrong thing to do, but that's what I always tend to do. So, is that on me? Probably. All right. The Ally has access to Game Pass. Sure, you can do cloud streaming on the Steam Deck, or you could install Windows on your Steam Deck, but I'm talking about an out-of-the-box experience. The Ally has Game Pass, the best value in gaming, in my opinion. S tier. Absolutely fantastic. The Steam Deck cannot compete with that. But you know what the Steam Deck has that the Ally can't compete with? Trackpads. The deck has trackpads, and I love trackpads. The trackpads on the Steam Deck allow you to do so many amazing things with Steam input that if you haven't used them, you gotta check them out. We had Bob Wolf on an episode of the NerdNest podcast, and he was, kind of railing about why, what good are the trackpads, and then
really kind of want a sleeker, more like thinner, more streamlined Steam Deck. I really don't think we need touch pads on the Steam Deck. It's just like a waste of space.
The most important things on the deck, it allows a larger game compatibility. I doubt Valve will drop it, thank goodness, in my opinion.
What game? What game you playing? What are we doing? Are you doing your taxes on your Steam Deck? Why do you need that?
And then he came around. He tried it. He checked out a couple videos of mine on how to set up the trackpads, and he was like, you know what? These are pretty cool. We only got 4 left. We're definitely going to take the Ally, and for compatibility, that's what compat means. For compatibility, it's got to be S tier. It's Windows. Games are made for Windows. And, I've never had a game. Well, okay, that's not true. There's one game that I've never been able to get to work on my ROG Ally, and that is Forza 5. Don't know why. Just won't work. I know other people run it just fine. It will not launch on mine. I can't figure it out. But every other game that I've tried to run on the ROG Ally has run. Like, it starts, which is fantastic. And you cannot say the same thing about the Steam Deck. What I can say about the Steam Deck as far as compatibility is it's way better than we thought it was going to be when they announced that it was Linux, So I'm going to say that the deck probably sitting at A tier when it comes to compatibility. Most games that I go to play just work. There definitely are some that won't work. And if you really like online multiplayer games where there is cheat detection or something, a lot of those cheat detection softwares don't support Linux, and so you won't be able to play every single game. So it certainly can't be as good as the Ally. Now, the last thing that I want to put on here is comfort. We got to put comfort on here, and you guys know what I'm going to say. The Steam Deck, S tier comfort, super comfortable system. When you hold it in your hand, it just melts away, and it just feels like it's just you in your game. And it even though this thing is a huge honking behemoth, it's just so comfortable to hold. It's so well balanced, and the shape of it is just perfect in my opinion. I don't know that they could improve upon this. I really don't. When the Ally was first announced, and I looked at it, I said, boy, that doesn't look very comfortable. And when I was just holding it, like I unboxed it and I was holding it without playing a game, it definitely felt uncomfortable. But when you're actually playing a game, it's not bad. My one gripe is these little points down here on the bottom. I think they do dig a little bit into my hand. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to put it at A tier. It's pretty good. But you're probably wondering, hey, I got this all out and done. Which one do I like better? It's not about that. It's not about which device do I like better. It's just about looking at their features and looking at them individually. They're both awesome systems, but I'm really curious what you would do with this tier list. So there is going to be a link posted in our community Discord. There's a link down below that'll take you to that Discord. And if you go to that Discord, you're going to be able to click on this link and make your own, and then you can post it in the Discord or on Twitter or wherever and show me all of the reasons that your list is better than my list. From the Nerd Nest, I'm Bill. Stay rad, everybody.